So today we're trying to make Haleem, which is like a stew with meat. And today it happens to be lamb and a combination of different pulses. So you've got barley, wheat and lentils, and it makes a lovely stew. It's very good in the winter. It's a nice, warming, soothing meal. So what do you need? You need a good quantity of pulses. You need to soak them overnight. There's about 1 kg of mixed lamb in there, lamb meat, ginger, garlic paste, haldi and salt, a couple of large onions. Most of this stuff is for garnish to put over the top once the stew is ready. You've got ginger, chilies, coriander and onions, and we've got a good base of tomato, chopped and blitzed tomato puree. So those are your ingredients, and in terms of the bulk of the spices, again we're going for a ready-made, ready-bought, shop-bought Shan Haleem seasoning. So let's get started. Okay, so step one, we've got these soaking overnight. You've got a combination of the pulses, barley, wheat and lentils, probably about 2.5 cups in there. At the same time, add your meat. There's about 1 kilo of meat there. Got turmeric, maybe about half a tablespoon. Put that in at this stage. And 1 tablespoon of salt. And just give that a little mix, and then we've had the kettle on, and just add boiling water at this stage. So this kettle's already boiled. We're just going to add that and put it on the heat until the meat is nice and tender. Okay, so we've got the broth on the go here, the base of the stew. So we've got about 2.5 cups of that pulse mix. We've got barley, wheat, lentils, washed and soaked the night before. They've gone in. We've also got the meat in there, and we've got some turmeric and some salt, and that's just been covered over with boiling water, and now that's going to be left to boil until the meat goes all tender. In the meantime, you can always move on to creating the base of the sauce, the spices, the spice base, but this will take a good 30 to 40 minutes until the meat is nice and tender. So we're just going to cover that and let that cook. Okay, next step. This has now had about 30 minutes. The meat's nice and tender. So the next stage is just to separate the meat from the lentils and the pulses. So we're going to take the meat out. Once all the meat is out of here, we're going to pull all of that meat off the bone, so it becomes like a pulled meat. So it's all separate strands of meat. A lot of people just leave it on the bone, but it's we make it this way. And then once that's out, we'll cover the next step, which is some leave the pulses intact. In our Haleem, the way we make it, it's going to be blitzed down with a blender while it's in here, so it's a nice puree of all the lentils. Okay, so we've separated the meat from the pulses, and the meat has been taken off most of the bones, so it's all in different strands like this. The rest of the stuff is almost ready to go. We're just going to blitz with a blender. We're going to blitz down the pulses into a nice puree. I'm going to carry on doing this. Once that's blitzed down, we'll get ready to make all the spices that go into the Haleem. Okay, so we've blended down the lentils and the pulses. You don't want to put it right down to a soup. You still need some texture in there, so you'll see from that you've still got quite large pulses. So that's kind of consistency you need, almost porridgey. Okay, so we've blended down the pulses. We're going to reintroduce the meat back into the Haleem. Just give that a mix, and then we'll move on to making the spice base in a separate saucepan. Okay, we've just put in the meat into the Haleem. While that's still on the heat, we're going to sweat down some onions. So we've got some oil in the bottom of the pan, and it's going to cook these onions through until they're nice golden brown, and then we'll just add some garlic and ginger paste in the next stage. Okay, so the onions have had about 10 minutes to brown up nicely. Once they're like that, get your garlic and ginger paste and add them. There's probably about 2 tablespoons each of each here. And give that a good mix. And then leave that on for a couple more minutes. Okay, so the garlic and ginger paste has had a couple of minutes just nicely mixed in. Now your kitchen should be smelling nice now with the onion, the garlic, the ginger. Just add your Haleem spice mix. Give that a nice mix, and then you should be ready next for your tomato puree. So I'm just going to mix this up. Okay, so the spices are nearly cooked through. Make sure you give it a bit of time. We've had about 5 minutes. We've also added some water because it was quite dry. Make sure the spices are cooked through. You don't want raw spices in there. And once that's done, just add your tomato puree and mix well in. Just wash out the bowl with a bit of water, add that in as well, and mix in thoroughly. Also, the spices and the spice base is nearly ready. As you can imagine, this is not a one pot or a one dish or a one karai dish. It's quite a complicated one. It's a bit of a delicacy, so it's not something you can knock up in about 40 minutes. There's different processes involved. You've got to soak the pulses the night before and then boil them, cook them separately, take the meat out, pull the meat off the bone separately, and cook a spice base separately, and then garnish separately as well. So it is a bit of a treat, and it is a very comforting meal, especially in the winter. So now what we're going to do is add the spice base back into the pulses, and then give them a thorough mixing. Okay, so the spices and the pulses have had a nice chance to mix in. We've just lightly garnished it with some coriander, some fried onions. We're ready to serve. Normally served in a nice deep bowl, eaten with a spoon with some nice chunky bread. Tiger bread is brilliant. And for additional garnish, people just sprinkle over the top fried onions, chilies depending on your heat preference, coriander, and ginger there. Lemon is an amazing accompaniment, much better fresh. So even if you just squeeze over some fresh lemon, or even some lemon juice or dressing. And if the spices in here are not quite enough, then there's always some extra chaat masala to sprinkle over the top. Like I say, it is a bit of a treat and a bit of a delicacy, so people do like it to be very flavourful. So a nice deep bowl, spoon, and some nice tough tiger bread to dip in and serve with a spoon and bread with accompanying garnish.